Hey there, everybody. Thank you for stopping by my channel, The Magical Solution. My name is Leilani, and we are live on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and TikTok. So we are going to move forward and continue forward with our Mediums book by Allan Kardec. I don't even remember what chapter we're on anymore, but the chapter is called The Development of Mediums. The subcategories are the development of mediumship, changes in handwriting, and the loss and suspension of mediumship. So let's do it. Let's get to it. Ugh. Your girl's eyesight's been a little funky lately, so I'm throwing on the glasses. Let's do this. The development of mediumship. We are here particularly addressing writing mediumship because this is the most widespread kind, and also because it is at the same time the simplest and most convenient, and the one that provides the most satisfactory and complete results. Furthermore, it is one of the most sought after. At present, unfortunately, there is still no means of diagnosing, even roughly, those who possess this faculty. The physical signs that some take as indications are uncertain, and we may find it in children, old people, men and women, whatever their temperament, health status, or degree of intellectual and moral development may be. There is only one way to ascertain its existence: experimentation. As we have already seen, writing may be obtained by using baskets and planchettes or directly by hand. Since this last method is the easiest and the only one used nowadays, it is the one we recommend. The process is quite simple, consisting merely in taking a pencil and paper and putting oneself in a writing position. No other preparation is needed. Nonetheless, several recommendations are indispensable for obtaining a good result. As for the physical conditions, we recommend avoiding anything that might impede the free movement of the hand. It is preferable that it is not entirely resting upon the paper. The point of the pencil should maintain enough contact to write, but not so much as to offer any resistance. All these precautions are of no importance, however, when the medium begins to write fluently, for then no obstacle at all can deter that hand. They are only preliminaries for the beginner. It does not matter whether a pen or a pencil is used. Some mediums prefer a pen, but it will only work for those who are fully developed and who write calmly. There are mediums who write so quickly that using a pen would be nearly impossible or at least very inconvenient. The same applies when the writing is jerky or irregular, or when dealing with violent spirits who tap and point and break it, tearing the paper up. Now, mind you, this was written at a time where they used um, those calligraphy pens, the ones where you got to dip it in the ink. So obviously, he's advocating for the use of a pencil because the whole dipping of the ink situation is difficult to do mediumship and be able to write really fast. So that was why he's saying this. The desire of the aspirants to mediumship is, of course, to be able to converse with the spirits of loved ones. But any impatience must be moderated because communication with a particular spirit nearly always presents physical difficulties that render doing so impossible for the novice. In order for a spirit to be able to communicate, there must be between it and the medium certain fluidic combinations, which are not always immediately established. Only to the degree that his or her mediumship develops will the medium little by little acquire the aptitude needed to communicate with the first spirit who presents itself at that time. However, it can also be that the longed for spirit is not in favorable condition to communicate in spite of actually being present, or that it is neither able nor permitted to respond to the evocation. Thus, it is best if, in the beginning, the medium refrains from evoking a particular spirit to the exclusion of any other, since fluidic relations often cannot be very easily established between the two, no matter how much affinity there may be. Consequently, before thinking about receiving communications from this or that spirit, it is first necessary to develop the faculty by making a generalized evocation and especially by addressing one's guardian angel. So he's basically saying here that before you start a mediumship session, be make sure that your evocation, especially when you're a beginner, make sure that the evocation is general, because when you try to request a very specific spirit in your evocation, especially when you're beginning, you're excluding any of the other spirits from coming through. And there's a possibility that the specific spirit that you're trying to reach cannot be accessible to you at that time for a various number of reasons, as they had said. And so you're missing out on an opportunity to possibly be speaking with another spirit who may be able to help you at that time. Okay. There are no sacramental formulas. Hi, Sham. I'm going to be answering questions towards the end. I usually read for about 45 minutes, and then the last 15 minutes, I will answer all your questions. So, yes, definitely ask questions as you have the inspiration to, but just keep in mind I won't be able to answer them until the end, okay? There are no sacramental formulas. Whoever claims to recite a formula that draws spirits may be firmly branded as an impostor, since formulas mean nothing to spirits. Nevertheless, the evocation must always be made in God's name. We may begin an evocation of a spirit by using the following phrases or similar ones. Here we go. I pray that the Almighty will allow a good spirit to communicate with me by causing me to write. I also pray to my guardian angel to assist me and protect me from evil spirits. So that's a good example. Then we wait for a spirit to manifest itself by causing us to write something. It could be that the spirit whom we had hoped for will in fact manifest itself, or it could be an unknown one, or even a guardian angel. In any case, it will usually identify itself by writing its name. This brings up the problem of identity, a problem that requires much experience to deal with because there are few novices who are not exposed to the possibility of being fooled. We shall soon address this issue in a special chapter. We want to call certain spirits. It is essential that we first address those whom we know to be good and attuned to us, and who might have a reason to answer, such as relatives and friends. So, as we've seen again, whenever you hear people who encourage you to start on the path of spirituality, to become a psychic or a medium or whatever, they usually say to you, start with your ancestors, right? Start with your departed loved ones whom who love you and who want your highest good and who want to work with you and make sure that you're safe. Those are usually the ones you want to try and reach out to first. And this will help you to, get your skills really good and finely attuned. And they will also be there to protect, and they will also help you to decipher good spirits from bad spirits. Okay. Thus, we might make an evocation along the lines of, in the name of the Almighty God, I pray that the spirit of, and then you name the person who passed that you know is of good spirit, will communicate with me, and I pray to the Almighty God to allow the spirit of the name of the person to communicate with me. Or other words, to the effect. Also, the first questions must be formulated in a way that the answers may be given as a simple yes or no. Okay? So for example, are you here? Do you wish to answer? Can you make me right? Etc. Later on, this precaution will be unnecessary. In the beginning, however, it is a means of establishing a relationship. The essential thing is that the questions not be useless. That is not that it not refer to private matters, and especially that it expresses a benevolent and sympathetic sentiment towards the spirit to whom it is addressed. Now, that might seem like a strange request, It's like, why do you have to be the one that's like nice to the spirit? Why do you know, wouldn't you think that asking private questions and questions that only you would know the answer to be a good thing in helping you decipher between spirits? Not necessarily, because even the ones who intend to fool you can do so in such a charming way as to, you know, have you believe that the answer is what you wanted it to be. Okay. And there are other reasons as well, but I mean, this is partially as to why. And also, you want to keep your vibration up. You want to keep it at a level of love and at a level of, you know, gratitude and kindness so that you are attracting and your fluids are attracting spirits of that nature. The minute you start becoming antagonistic or violent or aggressive in your questions, or in your, you know, experimentations, you will start attracting spirits that match that energy. Okay. A more important guideline to observe that the manner of making the appeal is calmness and meditation combined with an ardent desire and a firm will to succeed. By will, we do not mean an ephemeral or inconsistent desire, allowing ourselves at any moment to be interrupted by other matters, but a serious and preserving determination sustained with firmness and without impatience or anxiousness. Meditation is aided by solitude, silence, and the avoidance of anything that could cause a distraction. Thus, there is nothing more to it except this: renew the attempt every day for 10 or 15 minutes at the most, each time for 15 days, a month, 2 months, and more if needed. We know of mediums who only begin to display their abilities after 6 months of practice, whereas others begin to write correctly from the start. So he's highly encouraging meditation, highly. Um, And honestly, most mentors will encourage that as being your first step as well. In order to avoid futile attempts, one could question a serious and high order spirit through another medium. However, it is worthwhile to remember that when we propose a question to spirits to find out whether or not we possess mediumship, they almost always answer in the affirmative, which nevertheless does not mean that there will not be many unfruitful attempts. They do this because each of us have the potential within inside of us to be mediums. So of course they're going to answer yes, right? This may be easily this may easily be explained. If a generalized question is posed to a spirit, it will respond in a generalized manner. We know that nothing is more flexible than the faculty of mediumship, for it may appear under the most varied forms and to the most diverse degrees. Thus, one may be a medium without realizing it, or in a different sense than one would expect. To the vague question, am I a medium? The spirit will respond, yes. To the more precise question, am I a writing medium? It might respond, no. One must take the nature of the spirit being questioned into account. There are spirits who are so frivolous and so ignorant that they respond at random, like true harebrains. That is why we advise addressing enlightened spirits who usually willingly respond to one's questions and point out the best course to follow, if there is to be a possibility of success. An approach that almost always yields good results is the use of good, flexible, and already developed mediums as a temporary aid. Meaning that if you are a novice, if you are new to this, it's best to do these experimentations with spirits in the presence of experienced mediums. Number one, because your faculties will be elevated simply from being in the presence of more, you know, experienced mediums. But number two, they're also there to facilitate and to ensure safety and to ensure accuracy. Okay. If the medium places his or her hands or fingers upon the hand that is to do the writing, it is rare that it will not begin to move immediately. We may easily understand what occurs in such an instance. The hand holding the pencil becomes a kind of appendage of the medium's own hand, which, like a basket or planchette. However, this does not mean that the exercise is not very useful when employed, because if it is repeated frequently and regularly, it will help to overcome any physical objects and enable the faculty to develop. It is also sometimes sufficient to intently magnetize the arm and hand of the one who desires to write. Often, all the magnetizer has to do is place his or her hand on the person's shoulder. We have seen individuals immediately begin to write under such influences. What he means by a magnetizer, we've talked about this in previous chapters, right? So, an experienced medium can take on the role of a magnetizer, meaning that they can uplift the faculties of a novice medium through their own fluids. And so by touching the novice medium, or by, sitting in close proximity, they can kind of be a catalyst and sort of kickstart some of these faculties and some of these you know practices. Okay. The same effect may be obtained without any contact whatsoever and by a simple effort of the will. It is easy to understand that the confidence of the magnetizer in his or her ability to produce such a result must play a large role, and that an incredulous magnetizer will exert a weak influence or none at all. The help of experienced guides is also sometimes very useful to point out a number of small precautions that novices usually neglect, to the detriment of the speed at which they progress. It is especially useful for these guides to inform novices as to the nature of their first questions and the way in which they should be asked. Their role is that of teacher who is no longer needed when the student becomes sufficiently skilled. Now, we have known just in time that that's not true. Um, these spirit guides who help us in our faculties, we don't just throw them aside once we've gotten good at what we do. You know, we still pay homage to them. We still call upon them and give thanks to them. If they choose to move from medium to medium to medium to help them develop, and they're not sticking around for that reason, then that makes sense. But we don't actively choose to just toss them to the side once they've helped us. They usually become part of our spiritual court, even if it's just for a temporary time. Another method that can also contribute a great deal to the faculty's development consists in gathering a certain number of individuals together who are all animated with the same desire and intent. While waiting in absolute silence and spiritual meditation, they all simultaneously experiment with writing, each appealing to his or her guardian angel or to some sympathetic spirit. One of them can also make a generalized appeal to good spirits on behalf of all the members of the group without special designation, and say, for example, "In the name of Almighty God, we pray that good spirits will communicate through the persons gathered here. It is rare that among them there are not a few who promptly show signs of mediumship, or who even write fluently in just a short time." It is easy to understand what occurs in such an instance. Individuals gathered together for the same purpose form a collective whole whose power and sensitivity increase through a kind of magnetic influence, which aids the faculty's development. Among the spirits attracted by this assembly of wills, there are all there are those who find the instrument that best suits them in the midst of participants. It is not one, then it is another. Okay. This method should be particularly employed by spiritist groups that have no mediums available or that do not have them in sufficient number. Okay. Means have been sought for finding processes for the development of mediums as well as means for diagnosing mediumship. However, at present, We know of other means that are more effective than those we have just prescribed. By supposing that the obstacle to developing the ability is entirely physical, some individuals attempt to overcome it through a kind of gymnastics that can almost dislocate the arm and the head. We will not describe this process, which has come to us from across the Atlantic, not only because we have no proof of its effectiveness, but because we are convinced that it would actually be dangerous to delicate constitutions by harming the nervous system. If the seeds of the faculty are not there, nothing will work, not even the use of electricity, which some have already employed without success. So basically, don't be going around trying to electrocute yourself in order to develop your mediumship skills. Okay, that's what he's just said. That's what he said, and I agree with that. Don't be sticking a fork in the outlet. Don't do crazy stuff like that. Okay, please. Oh, please. Oh, Leilani told me no. We're not doing that. Faith is not an obligatory condition for beginners. There is no doubt that it aids the effort, but it is not indispensable. Pure intentions, desire, and goodwill are enough. We have seen completely disbelieving persons become startled at writing without wanting to, while sincere believers cannot produce a single thing, which shows that the faculty is somehow related to the organic predispositions. The first indication of the ability to write is a sort of quivering in the arm and hand. Little by little, the hand is seized by an impulse that it cannot control. Almost always in the beginning, only meaningless symbols are traced. Later, the characters become more precise, and finally, the writing progresses to end up acquiring the necessary speed. In all cases, however, it is always necessary to abandon the hand to its natural movement. The hand should neither be hindered nor assisted. Some mediums write fluently and easily from the start, sometimes even from the very first session, but that is quite rare. Others, for a long time, only succeed at strokes and handwriting exercises. The spirits say that it is to loosen up their head. If these exercises are too prolonged or degenerate into meaningless scratches, it is undoubtedly a spirit having fun, because good spirits do nothing useless. Good spirits do nothing useless. Okay? In such a case, the fervor in appealing to the good spirit should be doubled. If despite this there is no change, one should stop once one notices that nothing worthwhile is going to occur. One may make a daily attempt, but should stop at the first equivalent symbol in order not to provide an opportunity for mocking spirits. One spirit added to this observation: there are mediums whose faculty cannot go beyond such symbols. When after a few months they obtain nothing more than insignificant responses such as yes or no, or isolated letters, it would be useless to persist and waste paper. Okay, so that's from the spirits themselves. Okay, and basically what they're saying is maybe that's not your faculty. Maybe you're not a writing medium, and that's okay. There are different types of mediums. Again, this is the one that Allan Kardec and the spirits tend to favor the most because you can get direct quotes from the spirits by writing. Okay, so it is favored, but it's not required. Okay, these are mediums, but unproductive ones. So he's kind of hard on you guys. Sorry. Moreover, the first communication should only be considered as mere exercises that are entrusted to secondary spirits, a reason for not attributing anything more to them beyond a mediocre value. They should be regarded as spirits employed, so to speak, as writing masters who train the novice medium. We should never believe that high order spirits would lead the medium to perform these preparatory exercises. In addition, if the medium does not have a serious objective, these preparatory spirits may remain and attach themselves to him or her. Nearly all mediums pass through this test in order to develop. It is their responsibility to win the affinity of truly high evolved spirits. The main difficulty encountered by most novice mediums involves having to deal with less evolved spirits, and they should consider themselves fortunate when such spirits are merely frivolous. All their attention should be employed not to allow them to gain a foothold, for once they are firmly attached, it is not always easy to break free from them. This is of paramount importance, especially at the beginning, in which, without taking the necessary precautions, it is possible to lose the fruits of the finest abilities. All right, now this is not to scare anybody, but there is something to be said about that. Okay, and we'll get into that in a few minutes. Okay. Now, the first precaution is for mediums to arm themselves with sincere faith under the protection of God, asking the assistance of their guardian angel. This spirit is always good, whereas familiar spirits who are attuned to the good or bad qualities of the medium may be frivolous and even evil. The second precaution is for them to dedicate themselves with scrupulous care to recognizing through all the indications that experience offers the nature of the first communicating spirit whom it is always prudent to distrust. If the indications are suspect, they should fervently appeal to their guardian angel and repel the evil spirit with all of their might in order to discourage it by showing that it cannot deceive them. That is why a study of the doctrine beforehand is indispensable if the medium intends to avoid the trouble that is inseparable from a lack of experience. Fully developed instructions for this matter may be found in the chapters on obsession and the identity of spirits. We read that earlier. You can always go back to my previous YouTube channels for that. There will be there will li- Here we will limit ourselves to stating that besides language, we can consider infallible indications of less evolved spirits as including all useless or childish signs, figures, and symbols of any kind of bizarre, irregular, and intentionally malformed writing, whether exaggerated in size or ridiculous and unusual in form. Nevertheless, the writing can be very bad, even barely legible, without being unusual, a fact that might depend more on the medium than the spirit itself. We have seen mediums who are so badly deceived that they measured the superiority of the spirits by the size of the letters, assigning great importance to the well-formed ones that appear to be in printed characters, a childishness that is really incompatible with the true superiority of spirits. Oh Lord. If mediums must avoid unwilling if if mediums must avoid unwilling falling under the dominance of evil spirits, they should even more avoid voluntarily handing themselves over to them. An uncontrolled desire to write should not lead them to believe in the first spirit that comes along. Okay? Not even if the intention of, of freeing themselves from it later on when it is no longer serving them. Anyone will suffer the consequences of asking for assistance in any matter whatsoever from an evil spirit who may demand a very steep price for its services. So, again, this is coming from the perspective of beginner and novice mediums, okay? In other traditions, especially in traditions of the Caribbean where I come from, this idea of working with quote unquote evil spirits, because again we're gonna sort of decolonize these ideas later on, as to what is evil and what isn't evil spirits, because no offense, Allan Kardec was a white French man, and a very at the time the air was very racist. So a lot of evil spiritist activities and a lot of evil spirits were very much attributed to spirits of brown people. So, you know, when we go to talk about this, I agree with him here that new mediums should not be offering themselves up to evil spirits. Definitely not. And that if you do, you're going to pay a steep price for that for sure. Um, But I also want to say that an espiritista, spiritists, we don't discriminate against spirits. Like we not work with, but we understand all of them. Good, bad, evil, angelic, and everything in between. And the use of quote unquote lower vibrational spirits have their place in some traditions, not in all. Okay, so I just kind of want to make that clear. But in terms of being a beginner at all this, yes, definitely don't fuck around with lower level energies right now. Okay, some individuals who have become impatient with their mediumistic developments because it seems to be progressing too slowly, get the idea of seeking help of any spirit whatsoever, even an evil one, planning to send it away later on. Many are quickly answered and immediately begin to write. However, the spirits, not at all minding having been summoned as a last resort, show themselves quite unmanageable when it comes time to leave. We have known mediums who were punished for their presumptuousness in thinking that they were strong enough to send such spirits away at will. They were submitted to years of obsession of every kind through the most outrageous hoaxes, through tenacious fascination, or even through physical disasters and the cruelest of disappointments. The spirit at first showed itself to be plain evil, but later became hypocritical by trying to make the medium believe that it had reformed, or by pretending that it was actually under the power of the medium, who could supposedly expel it whenever they desired. The writing is sometimes quite legible, with the words and letters perfectly salient, but with certain mediums, the writing is difficult to decipher by anybody other than the person who is writing it, making it necessary to become accustomed to it. Quite often, the writing consists of large strokes. Spirits are not concerned with saving paper. Whenever a word or sentence is hard to read, we ask the spirit to please write it again, which is usually does willingly. Whenever the writing is habitually illegible, even to the medium, he or she can nearly always render it clearer with frequent and sustained practice, performed with much willpower, and by arduously beseeching the spirit to be more accurate. Often, some spirits adopt convenient marks which they use during habitual meetings. For example, to show that it finds a question disagreeable, that it does not wish to respond, it will draw a long stroke or other such indication. When the spirit reaches the end of what it wants to say or no longer wants to respond, the medium's hand becomes still, and no matter what his or her ability or willpower may be, not another word will be obtained. On the other hand, when the spirit has not yet finished, the pencil continues without the hand being able to stop it. If the spirit wants to say something spontaneously, the hand compulsively picks up the pencil and begins to write without being able to oppose it. Moreover, the medium almost always feels something that indicates whether there has only been a pause in the communication or whether the spirit has indeed finished. And it is rare that the medium does not sense the spirit. These are the most important explanations we have to give in addressing psychographic development. With practice, experience will bring certain details to light, which would not be worthwhile to discuss at present, and general principles will clarify how to approach them. If people would only experiment more, mediums would appear than was thought possible. Everything we have stated so far applies to mechanical writing, which is the faculty that all mediums seek with good reason to develop. Yet, a purely mechanical function is very rare, and quite frequently, intuition is coupled with it to some degree. When mediums are aware of what they are writing, they are naturally led to doubt their ability, not knowing if the writing is their own or if it is from spirit. They should not be overly concerned about it, however, and should proceed in spite of their doubt. By careful observation, they will easily recognize When the writings may appear, when writings, ugh, they will easily recognize in the writings many matters that do not pertain to themselves or which are even contrary to their own thoughts. Ample proof that they did not originate in their own mind. If they will continue, their doubt will dissipate with experience. Okay? If certain mediums are unable to be exclusively mechanical, all attempts to obtain this result will be futile. But they would be mistaken to suppose that they have been deprived altogether. If they are endowed only with intuitive mediumship, they should be content with it because it will render them a great service if they know how to take advantage of it instead of re- repe- re- repudiating it. After futile attempts have been made for quite some time, if there is no indication of involuntary movement, or if there are only movements that are too weak to produce results, one should not hesitate to write the first thought that comes to mind, without being concerned as to whether it's their own or another's, and this will teach them how to make the distinction. Besides, the mechanical movement will often develop later on. We have stated above that there are cases in which it does not matter if it is a thought that comes from the medium or from the spirit. This is especially true when purely intuitive or inspired mediums are writing a work involving their own imagination. In such a case, it matters little whether or not the thought was suggested to them. If worthwhile ideas occur to them, they should thank their good spirit, who will then suggest more ideas to them. This is how poets and philosophers and scientists are inspired. Let us now suppose that mediums' faculties have been completely developed, that they write easily and are what we might call fully developed mediums. It would be a big mistake on their part to regard themselves as being no longer in need of further instruction, since they will have merely overcome the physical resistance. It is now the true difficulties. It is now that the true difficulties begin, and that now more than ever they will need the advice of prudence and experience if they do not want to fall into thousands of traps that will be waiting for them. If they want to fly blind on their own wings, it will not be long before they are deceived by lying spirits who will try to exploit their presumptions. So this is a really important point, right? Because I have met, I mean, and this goes even for myself, but I have met many mediums who have been doing this mediumship now for like 10, 11 years and still would fall victim to certain issues, what we call, causes, um, or attachments or attacks, things like that. And, they ask themselves why. And it's a lot of the times it's because they never had a mentor, they never were trained with someone, and they have been doing it for so long that they think that they don't need a mentor or a trainer even now, 10 years, 11 years later. And that is just such a wrong way of approaching mediumship because when you're working in the spirit world, you have to think of it kind of like working in the physical world. There are 7 point whatever billion people on this planet. Do you think you've met everyone? Have you met all 7 billion people? No, you have not. And the ones that you have met, okay, maybe you've been lucky and only the ones you've met so far have been really good people. But there will come a day where you meet that one person who robs you, or that one person who wants to hurt you, or that one person who's crazy, or whatever. And that's a day that you won't be prepared for because you've never been through it, and you especially haven't been through it with a mentor. And so, and there are mediums out there who have gone 10, 11 years without ever encountering a bad spirit, and good for them. I hope it never happens. But this is something that we definitely encourage people to understand that you are forever a student. And the same way that there are 7 billion people on this planet, there are also billions of spirits, like an infinite amount of spirits, and not all of them are great. So, like, it's important to, no matter how far along you are in your practice, should always have a reserve of other mediums who are more experience and who have dealt with these other entities before, who you have in your back pocket as people who will be there to support you and mentor you and help you work through these things. Um, and I promise you, you'll be better off for sure. Once a faculty has been developed, it is essential that mediums not abuse it. The satisfaction that some beginners derive from it elicits an enthusiasm that needs to be controlled. They must bear in mind that it has been given to them for good use and not to satisfy vain curiosity. Thus, it is essential that they only utilize it at appropriate times and not at every instant. Spirits are not constantly at their orders and they run the risk of being deceived by pranksters. To avoid such impropriety, it is advisable to set certain days and hours aside for practicing mediumship so that one may be more concentrated and so that the spirits who want to communicate, knowing about it in advance, will also be more disposed to be present. So, again, this is why spiritist centers are what they are. This is why mediums tend to meet, once a month or, bi-weekly or whatever. And this is why espiritistas will create, spiritual altars and bovedas and meet at that boveda at a very specific time of day, at a very specific day of the week, to commune with their spirits, to work on their mediumship development, and to create a routine with yourself and create a routine between you and your spirits. This is really, really, really important. Otherwise, you will be kind of like an open book all the time, and your spirits will be running amok all the time, and you don't want that. Okay. If, in spite of all attempts, mediumship does not surface in some form, then it is best to give up on it, as we would be as a would-be singer would give up after discovering he or she had no voice after all. I have been saying this for so long, and everyone says to me, "Leilani, you are such a dick." Like, everyone has the potential of being a medium. Like, everyone can has the potential to be a singer. Yeah, well, you know what? Lions have the potential to be vegetarians, but you know what? It's not in their nature. It's not. Everyone has the potential to sing, but maybe in this lifetime, you are tone deaf, and that is okay. Everyone has the potential to be a medium, but maybe in this lifetime, you are having a difficult time, you know, getting your spiritual faculties in place due to X, Y, and Z, and you know what? That's okay. Your purpose is something else this go around, and that's okay, you know? But yeah, he straight up said, like, "Look, just hang it up, bitch, just hang it up." In the same way that someone who does not understand a foreign language resorts to an interpreter, the person will have to resort to another medium. But even if there is no medium available, we should not deem ourselves to be without assistance of spirits. Mediumship is only one means for spirits to communicate, but it is not the sole means of attraction. Those who have dedicated their affection to us are with us whether or not we are mediums. So he's talking about your ancestors, he's talking about your family, people who have passed. Whether you're a medium or not, they are always nearby, they are always accessible, okay? A father does not abandon his son because the son is deaf and blind and can neither hear nor see him. On the contrary, he involves himself even more in his care. Good spirits do the same for us. If they are unable to physically transmit their thoughts to us, they help us with our inspiration. All right, so we are at 7:45. It is time for your questions. And when we come back next Thursday, we will be talking about the changes in handwriting and the loss and suspension of your mediumship faculties. Okay, that's what we'll be talking about next time we get together. Um, so let's get to some of your questions. Let's see. Hi, Yusef. How are you? Okay. So every time you read from the Spiritist book or the Medium's book, we always see that you're covering your head with a white cloth. Is there a relation or a reason for that? I'll be honest with you. I'm gonna be super honest with you. It's just coincidental. It's just coincidental. I am a working medium, and I give readings all day and throughout the day, and 90% of the time, people like to book readings right before I do a live. So I tend to, get done with the reading, and then I jump right on the computer to get these lives out, and I usually don't change. So you tend to see me in my ritual garb a little bit, a little bit. I mean, I change like my shirt and stuff like that. Um, Second, another reason why I either wear a wig or something on top of my head is reading for me is a puts me in a trance state. I actually, when I'm reading, I get a lot of communication from spirits, which is why when I'm reading, I tend to pause a lot and I tend to stumble on my words. It's not because I don't see what I'm reading. It's not because I don't understand what I'm reading. It's because I'm hearing stuff and I'm getting interrupted and I'm trying to like push it away like while I'm reading and while I'm trying to engage you guys. So it's definitely to be honest with you, if I didn't have ADHD, that would be such an awful experience. But because I have ADHD, I'm able to kind of pay attention to all of it at once, I guess. Anyway, but my point is that when I read, I go into these trance states, and so it is actually really helpful for me to either wear a wig or a head covering to protect my head. I like to do that. It makes me feel safe. Um, that is my ADHD is my superpower, dude. For real. Apocalypta, how you doing? Um, so let's see. I think TikTok also had a few questions as well. How do you know who is your guardian angel? So here's the deal with that. So um knowing who is in your spiritual court, knowing who guards you and protects you is something that you can do both on your own or with the help of another medium. um Usually when you get these kinds of readings done, it's called spiritual investigation or spirit court consultation, or like it has like certain names depending on who you're seeing and what tradition that they're from. But basically, when you go see a medium or a diviner, you specifically want to ask them, I want to know who my spirit guides are. That's your question. I want to know who walks with me, who my spirit guides are, and who my guardians are. And if your diviner and your medium is worth their salt, they'll know what you mean by that. And they can consult you on the type of reading you should be getting. Um, if they don't know what that means, it just simply means that they don't specialize in that kind of work. So they'll have to refer you to someone else. Okay. Another piece of advice when it comes to finding out who your guardians are and who your spirits are is get a lot of different readings from a lot of different mediums. It's really important to do that because different mediums will help you to get the names and the different spirits that are in your court. And it'll help you compile a more comprehensive list of spirits. And by cross referencing these different mediums, some of them may confirm other spirits that have already been brought up from previous mediums. And that's really important too, because that means that that particular spirit is very, very consistent in your court and very present in your life to the point where now they show up in all these different mediums readings. So that's good to know as well. Okay. So those are my two little bits of advice for you. How do I feel about Metatron? I'm gonna be honest with you, I am not, like, an expert when it comes to all these angelic names and stuff like that. Like, I've read about them, I understand, like, their purposes and stuff, but I don't fixate on it as much as I do nature and elemental spirits. I work very, very closely with, elemental energies and spirits of, like, the earth and spirits that are more correlated with our plane. So I work a lot with the dead. I work a lot with elementals. I work a lot with just the energies that are more easily accessible to us around here. So hopefully that was helpful. I apologize. Any other questions? Anything about the book that we read? that you guys have questions about? Nope. Okay. Hi, Cosmos. Thanks for joining. I actually just finished, bro. I just finished one of the chapters. So now I'm just kind of taking questions and doing the thing. How about you guys here in Facebook land and in YouTube land? All right, guys. Well, if there are no further questions, then we will meet here next Thursday, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You know how we do. And make sure you like, share, comment, and subscribe. This is how we grow, you guys.